Okay, moving forward, how do we overcome these limitations? Am I right or wrong? How do we overcome those limitations? Of course, we know that the spreadsheet has certain limitations. Now, how do we overcome it? That's the question. Am I right or wrong? Correct? That's where the databases will come into picture. So, the databases begin in late 1970s. That means the development of this databases started in 1970s or early 1980s and continues to this day. You all know the importance of the database, how critical and how important the database is. Because ultimately, if you look at your application architecture, the application architecture consists of three layers. One of it is the application layer, and the other one is called as a business layer, and other is called to be the data layer. That's where all your data will exist inside the databases. So the databases are the place where the organizations will store their transactional information. Okay, we will see there are different types of databases and how will they help us and when to use which database. We'll look at them. Okay, but databases plays a very important role in your data layer. So any application per se you take will have three layers. One is called as an application layer, where the users will basically interact with those applications. Are you all following what I am saying? That means that is where I could able to perform any sort of an interaction with my application. One of the examples is Amazon.in. Am I right or wrong? When you go to Amazon.in, Amazon.in is an application. It's a web application. Am I right or wrong? Where the user could able to perform all the actions he wanted to perform. That means if I wanted to purchase something, I can click on it. If I wanted to, there are several such actions you can perform in Amazon.com, correct? You can apply discounts, you can do several things. But ultimately, where is this data has been getting stored? That's the question. Am I right or wrong? That means any sort of an action you are performing. Let's say if I add to a cart, let's take this as an example. When I go to Amazon.in, if I go here and I will say add this to the cart. Add to the cart. The moment I add this to the cart, this was added to my cart. Am I right or wrong? I could see the information over here. Even when I do a refresh, is this information still exist or has it vanished? It still exists. So how is this still exist? That's the question, correct? So now when you look at a typical application architecture, it could be a web application or a standalone application or anything per se. In this case, this is a web application. Whatever you are seeing is running in an application layer inside my web browser. Correct? Now, where this, there is one more layer called as a business layer. That's where all your business logic will be get applied. Let's say, what is the business logic? There is a user A and a user B. On a Christmas day, the user A got a discount of 25%. The user B got a discount of 15%. Who had decided this? The user A should come 25% or the user B should be getting 15%. Who had decided this? There should be some logic who has to decide that, correct? Am I right or wrong? So, what is that logic? Where will that run is inside your business layer. So, business layer is a very critical layer where all your applications will interact to it. So, any sort of an action you perform per se or anything that you see in your application per se, all these business decisions will be taken by the business layer. So, all the critical applications of any application per se you take or any sort of critical jobs for an application per se will run inside the business layer. And what are the criteria to give this discount is also an important question, correct? Let's say I had purchased 10,000 items and then user A had purchased 10,000 items and user B had purchased only 10 items. That's the reason why user A is been given with a discount of 25% and a user B is been given with a discount of 15%. And that someone has to do it, correct? Does human do it manually? How many users in Amazon will have? Lots of users, correct? Millions of users, correct? So now that means there should be something happen programmatically. Am I right or wrong? So I cannot appoint thousands of people to do this job, to assess how many items a particular user had performed. Based on that, I cannot go and give a discount, correct? That means there has to be some program, some logic in place which has to decide it. Am I right or wrong? So where will that logic run? That logic will run inside the business layer. So now to do this analysis, you need to store all this information, correct? How many users, what items and each user is been performing, how many items and each user had actually purchased from an application. Am I right or wrong? So that has to be stored somewhere. Am I right or wrong? So that has to be stored somewhere, correct? Where will that will be get stored is, that will be get stored inside the databases. So databases plays a very critical role inside your data layer. There are several other things which has an ability to store the data, but if you take the chances of storing to the databases are quite high when compared to other type of storages. We have several storages, correct? Not just the databases. You can store the information in the form of a file. You can store the information in form of some other sort of the formats, and some different storages. One of the storage is S3. S3 is called to be one of the storage. It's called as a cloud storage. I can still store my information there and still do an analysis on top of it. But these are all called to be the transactional data. What is a transactional data and what is an analytical data? You will understand as we keep proceed in this course. Okay? And why is the transactional data very important, and what is the difference between a transactional data and the analytical data is what we will be seeing as we keep proceeding in this course. But I hope you guys understood the importance of a database. So database are one of the key critical components in your data layer to store the information, in this case the transactional information of a user. That means any sort of an user, any sort of an operation or any sort of an action user perform, those actions will be captured by your application and it will be sent to the business layer, and the business layer will look into the data and it will take an appropriate action, and the business layer will store that information inside the databases for the future usage. Are you all following what I am saying?